Today, what we are going to study is elasticity. This is essentially, this is a measurement. Okay. So why do we need this? That is the basic point of learning. So why do we need this measure? That is the first basic point of learning. So what is it? To put it simply, it is a measure. It is a measure of how much, it is a measure of how much buyers, how much buyers and sellers respond to changes in market condition, in market conditions. Okay. Now, elasticity is a very interesting measure in the sense that although we'll be talking mostly about price elasticity of demand, you must also understand that price elasticity of demand, it tells something about the buyer's behavior that is that is important for the seller to know. Okay, so we'll see how that comes into the picture. All right. So for the time, one of the speciality of this section or this discussion is that this discussion is quantitative. So for example, here we are not going to draw some diagram and try to shift the curves left and right and see how demand and supply changes like earlier. So here, apart from the direction, we are also interested in a numerical measure. And that measure is essentially elasticity. As you can understand, that slope is not really sufficient. Okay, so where slopes falls behind and elasticity comes in front, that is the point of actual learning. All right, so if we have to have a sort of rigorous definition, because it is end of the day a measure. So when you study a chapter on some measure, there are two different things that are under discussion. Number one is its definition, and the second one is its formula. And every time we deal with a measure, the formula tells actually a lot more than the definition. So for example, if we want to give a definition of elasticity, slightly more concrete than the first sentence that I have written, okay, then it will be a measure of the responsiveness, a measure of the responsiveness of quantity demanded or quantity supplied okay, to a change in one of its determinants. In one of its determinants. Okay. Now, so there are two things. First of all, we talked about quantity demanded or quantity supplied. That means essentially the measure elasticity, it deals with a movement along the demand curve. Okay. And responsiveness, how do we measure that? That is the question. Okay. So we have a lot of options when it comes to change in one of its determinants. So if we remember the demands for quantity demanded, there are three important variables at least. Number one is the own price of the good, then a price of some other related good, and then income. So we have basically elasticity of demand for each of them. So the first elasticity, the first kind of elasticity that we'll start with is the price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. Now there are many symbols closely related that we use to denote. In some cases, it is in general it is denoted by E, then price elasticity P, and then to denote demand D. Okay, it can also be written as EP, comma D. In rare cases, also sometimes we represent it by epsilon. Okay, and in general, if only E or epsilon is written, our understanding is that we are talking about price elasticity of demand. So of this, that is price elasticity of demand, we can give a concrete definition, which essentially is kind of a formula, is kind of the formula written in English words, because that's how a measure is. So it is a measure of percentage change in quantity demanded, percentage change in quantity demanded in response to a 1% change in the 1% change in the own price of the good. Own price of the good. Okay, that's how it works. So sometimes we call it price elasticity of demand. To specify it more, you can call it own price elasticity of demand. There are several ways of calling it. But generally, if we write elasticity in somewhere, elasticity of demand, then our what we understand is we are talking about own price elasticity of demand. Okay. So one of the customary part is to study the determinants of elasticity, or the determinants of price elasticity of demand. So number one, and these are basically these determinants, they also come up with some rules. So for example, number one is availability of close substitutes or substitute goods, so to say. Substitutes. So if there are close substitutes, what will happen? Demand will be more elastic. Okay. So let's write that. Goods with close substitutes, tend to have more elastic demand. And why is that? More elastic demand. Why is that? Because write it here, because consumers can easily switch to other options. Other options. Okay. Now, obviously, the idea of this close substitutes, it depends on how we are defining the good itself. Okay. So, for example, if we are talking about tea by Goodrick, then obviously the consumer has a lot more option, because there is Twinings, there is CTC, or there is Lopchu, there are so many brands. But obviously, if we are talking about tea in general, then the close substitute can be coffee or juice or something, or something like that. So obviously, the list of close substitutes, that that can be lengthy or short depending on how we define the good itself, or how we are searching. But the idea is that obviously, if there are higher number of close substitutes, then demand will be elastic, because whenever the price increases, the consumer will buy less of it, not only because the price has increased, but also because there are options with lower price. Okay, so that is how close substitute. So that's why close substitutes and elastic demand, they are all related to something called a competitive market. So we'll come to that much later. Anyway, so number 2 is necessities versus luxuries. Basically, things that we had to consume, although the idea of necessity really changes from profession to profession, and obviously from income to income. So we'll come to that. But in general, keeping all those things constant, at least, necessities are something that you need to have. That means even when the price increases, you can't really, you can't really reduce your demand. Whereas for luxury, the setup is entirely different. Luxury is basically something that you can do away with. You may not buy, or you can postpone. So that means necessities tend to have inelastic demands. Inelastic demands. Inelastic demands. Whereas luxuries have elastic demand. Elastic demand. Okay. So for example, price paid for a doctor's visit versus buying a painting. Okay. So if you're thinking of buying a painting, and if you think that there is a surge in prices, then actually you can postpone the plan, because it's a luxury. You cannot live without having a painting. Okay. Obviously, if you are talking about people who are fans, or fanatics, so to say, then it's a different scenario. But for a normal person, if we assume, now doctor's visit is something that it's, you cannot do anything about it, right? So if you have a problem, you go to the doctor. Even when the fees are changing, they are higher, you go. So that is why people could not have opted for not going to hospitals. Rather, they opted for health insurance. So there is a sort of, there is a necessity that is related to it. So even when the prices of medicines they increase, we cannot do anything about it. Right? Obviously, that factor itself, kind of brings in a point of exploitation in the whole of health sector. And I must say that it is there to a certain extent. But anyways, so that's how this point of exploitation comes, because this is a necessity. All right. But here you don't have that, so you can simply postpone the plan. Anyway, so that is why the elasticities vary. Okay. But then again, as I said, that this part, it also depends on preference. So if you are avid photographer, let's say, then however high may be the price of a camera, you're going to buy it. But if you are not a photographer, if you are if you don't have that habit, you are just wishing to buy a camera, then a higher price can actually kind of stop you from buying that. Okay, so obviously in this part, buying a painting, there is an underlying rule of preference. Okay. All right. So then, as I said at first, while discussing the first determinant, that definition of the market. Okay. So how does it affect? Narrowly defined markets tend to have more elastic demand, okay, than broadly defined ones, broadly defined ones. That is markets, basically, broadly defined ones. As close substitutes are higher for a narrowly defined market. Okay. So, for example, let's say if you are looking for so if you are looking for market for cars, okay. So market for cars, if you're looking for cars, let's say, then it's a very broad category. And it will be hard to find substitutes of a car which we can really call close substitute. Okay. Now, if you then say that market for Maruti cars, okay, then obviously it is a narrow category, and you will get higher number of substitutes. So Mahindra, Tata, Ford, Nissan, Kia, there are so many companies. And then if you narrow it further, so if you ask for market for Maruti, let's say WagonR, okay, then that is even a narrower category. And there you will have very, very close substitutes, which are some of which will even belong from Maruti itself. So how this is changing? the way it is changing is that number of close substitutes are increasing. But what is the message in that? What is the message? The message is this: if we talk about a change in the price of cars, that is, let's say, an increase in the price of cars, then it is not really going to affect other substitutes because they are not really close. So, for example, we can talk about bikes or bigger vehicles like pickup trucks or something. Then, if we come about market for Maruti cars, then there an increase in price will affect very hard for the demand of Maruti. So because of that, there will be a huge increase. There will be an increase in demand for other company cars, right? Maruti, Tata, or Mahindra, or Ford. Now, if we come to this, that is market for Maruti WagonR, and if I consider for this car an increase in price, then that is going to affect the sales of other hatchbacks or other cars of Maruti itself. So it has a strong effect on the demand for WagonR. So if I take, if I consider an increase in the price for Maruti cars, obviously it will reduce the demand for Maruti cars, but not as much as if I consider an increase in the price of a specific car and the reduction of demand of this specific car. So that is why if you choose a class, even in car market, for example, if you talk about, let's say, we call them hatchbacks, that is small cars, so to say, though all the hatchback has a very precise definition. Anyway, so if we talk about hatchbacks, within that category, you will see that there is a huge price competition and side change, boot space, and all of that is going on. So there is a huge competition in that category. So for example, if you choose a category called MPV, which is basically kind of station wagon, you can say. So in that market also, you will see that there is a stiff price competition. All right. So, but if you go to car, then this amount of competition, it reduces. The reason I'm saying all this is because later you will see that there is a very strong relationship between this elasticity of demand and the market structure. Okay, and also it is also a determinant of a farm making their price choices, right? But for the timing, what we see is that more elastic demand basically leads to a more competitive structure. Not the demand of the consumer, but the consumer's demand that is faced by the farm. Okay. And that's kind of, obviously, if you rethink it, it looks trivial that narrower category, obviously the competition will be higher. But the point is that that higher competition is connected to the value of elasticity. And lastly, time horizon. This is important basically for bigger scenarios. So that I think is 4. And there we have a result that so what do you mean by time horizon? Basically, with time, elasticity of demand, and thereby we mean own price elasticity. So elasticity of demand of the same good changes. Now this is interesting in the sense that means, let's say if there is a change in the price of petroleum today, then the change in the quantity demanded of petroleum that we will observe now, it is not going to stay like that. Actually, it is going to increase. The decrease in quantity demanded of petroleum is actually going to increase with time. So that means this is important, this idea of time horizon, because it gives a signal, obviously, to the producers to prepare for the way the consumer will behave in 6 months or 1 year. Okay, and that's how the production decisions are again affected. So for example, if petrol prices rise today, then it's hard, suddenly it is hard for car owners not to drive their car from tomorrow. Their habit will change, but it will take time, right? So for a short time period, you may think that increasing the price of petrol and diesel is quite a success, but it is actually not, in the sense that over longer time, you will see that the usage of high priced fuel has reduced a lot, and people are moving into much more fuel efficient cars. This is something that has happened in America in quite a huge way. And now all those, as we said, all those fuel consuming cars, they are coming to developing countries like India and China, because somehow the leftovers of US are getting quite popular in our countries. Right? Suddenly we are thinking that, with those leftovers taken, uh, we can go close to them, which is definitely not the reality. Anyways, so here we are not to discuss all those aspects. They will be as they are. So as a result, what you can say is that non-durable goods are more elastic over longer term. Okay, or we can say, like, we can put it like this: that durable goods have a inelastic demand, or okay, if like the durable goods have elastic demand in the short run, SR, that is short run, and inelastic demand over long run. Okay, in general, in macro, actually we like the LR. Okay, so this is something. So what about durable goods means? Think of anything that you have, for example, microwave oven, free refrigerator, Almira, to bigger durable goods like cars. If you see a price rise, then you can simply postpone your buying plans. Okay, so that's how the demand becomes more elastic in the short run. But in the longer run, what happens is people end up buying it with further planning, or kind of getting a higher amount of money saved or something. So over long run, there is an inelastic demand. However, in the short run, the demand quantity demanded basically reduces by quite a higher amount. For non-durable goods, to put it simply, it is connected basically to habits. Okay. So because of that, you cannot change that in the short run. Okay. Now we come to the formula, and the formula is very simple. Although this formula that I'm going to write, it is called point elasticity of demand. Point elasticity of demand. Okay, because the formula measures the elasticity at a single point on the demand curve. Now you may say that what is the how does it make even sense? Because elasticity is we are talking about measuring the change or responsiveness. So what do we mean by that when we say point? We are measuring at a point. So first, let us look at the formula. So the formula is pretty simple. So price elasticity of demand as we symbolized it, E, P, and D is equal to, or to clarify, you can even write own. So that will be equal to, it's very simple, dq dp into p by q. Okay, so as I said, it's a mathematical formula basically. Okay, now let us draw a demand curve and try to understand what we are actually trying to measure. So we talked about measuring a change, and for that change we are using differentials. That means what? That means if this is my demand curve, okay, with Q and P and origin, and if I'm trying to measure the elasticity at point A using this formula, then basically this means that I'm taking a very small neighborhood around this point, right? And even smaller than this actually. I mean, technically, you won't be able to see that. So, and I'm measuring the effect of change of price in the effect of change of quantity response, that is in percentage terms. So we are looking at changes in percentage terms. So that's why you can easily say that the formula looks like this. So if I take up this formula, okay, let me just write E own. So then dq dp, that's the slope obviously, and then p by q. So if I take this up, and if I go like this, that I can write is that as dq by q divided by dp by p. I can write like this also, which basically means I'm talking about d log q divided by d log p. Although we have a culture of saying it divided by, but it's mathematically wrong. We must say that this is d log q, d log p. That's what it is. And this idea of d log q, since we are using log, and you know that log measures the change, we are measuring, so we are measuring percentage change, okay, at a point. Percentage change at a point. That's what we are doing. So although I'm writing at a point, probably it will be better if we write around the point. Anyways, so this is what the formula is. So you can easily calculate or compute that. Now, obviously, we are talking about demand, and usually, that is, if it is not a given good, usually the demand curve is downward sloping. So this first order here that we have is always negative. Right? So what we can write is this, you know, owing to the law of demand, owing to the law of demand, own price elasticities are always negative. Remember, if you get it positive, basically only then you are talking about given goods. But in general, in normal cases, obviously we are having a negative number. Now there is a issue of culture here, because the issue is this, that in many cases this elasticity is reported by its absolute value, because it is always negative, and the related idea of demand being elastic or inelastic is easy to understand. Okay. So this means what? This means when we are saying, when we'll be writing a line like, we'll write that that demand is elastic if elasticity is this, or demand is inelastic if elasticity is this, we'll be writing that in absolute terms. The reason is that in absolute values, it is always true. So in case of demand curve, when you will be solving a problem, you will just put a minus sign in front of that, and that will give you the calculation. So obviously we'll come to supply curve, and you'll see that in supply curve, the opposite thing, the formula will give the opposite result because it is positively sloped. So in that sense, obviously the shape sort of changes or something, but sort of changes basically. But anyways, the advantage is that it's help us to kind of remember what kind of demand curve is elastic and what kind of demand curve is not elastic. That's how, because just adding the minus sign will just bring in a lot of confusion. That's it. But remember that if you see in a problem that elasticity of demand is given as a positive number, that doesn't mean it is wrong. It means that when you'll be actually solving the problem, just put a minus sign in front of it and solve your problem. In cases where it is given already as a minus sign, it's fine, but that's not generally the culture of a microeconomics book. Okay, you will see why that is not. Okay, so it has just said terms. We have said a lot about elastic demand and inelastic demand. So what are actually they? Okay. So a larger absolute absolute value, a larger absolute value is said as higher elasticity. Higher elasticity. Okay. So why we are talking about this again? Because we will be saying that demand is elastic. What we say is this: demand is elastic if this E is greater than 1. Okay. So demand is elastic if this E is greater than 1. But you know that in theory, this is not greater than 1. It's basically, if in terms of computation, it will become -1. So when I'm talking about E greater than 1, then I'm actually talking about E less than -1. So we do not do all this so that this calling culture, larger absolute value and higher elasticity, it remains the same because it is the same culture that we will follow in supply also. So in case of supply, we will also say supply is elastic if E strictly greater than 1. So it reduces our problem. We don't have to remember two different things. That's it. So elastic if E greater than 1. Now you can think inelastic if E less than 1. All of them are absolute values, right? And then we have this unitary if E is equal to 1. Then perfectly inelastic if E equal to 0, and perfectly elastic if E approaches infinity. We could have written E equal to infinity, but that not really is correct. Okay, so we'll see that while we draw different demand curves for these different elasticities. But before that, we need to look at a different formula of elasticity also. And this is called arc elasticity of demand. The idea is very simple. the idea is that, let's say we are working around this demand curve. Okay. Now, given a point, when I'm measuring the point elasticity of demand, given a point A, when I'm measuring a point elasticity of demand, then I'm talking around this point. But think of those problems where you have given the price and quantity at this point A, and then you have given a price and quantity at some different point B with QB and PB, sorry. What happens then? Now this gap is a much higher gap. So our idea of differentiation will not work here, right? So we need a different formula. Now also, since we are talking about change in quantity and change in price, a good question is, what is the initial point? So from which point we are measuring this? So if we are measuring a change from A to B, then the initial point will be PA and QA. And if you are measuring from B to A, then the initial point will be PB and QB. And since in the formula we have, apart from dq dp, we have P by Q, it is natural that the elasticity itself will change going from A to B and from B to A. Now to resolve all those problems, we define a formula for arc elasticity in the name of arc elasticity of demand, which resolves basically all of this. So what is the formula? The formula is pretty simple. So if I say elasticity and then arc, then it goes like this. It is Q2 minus Q1 divided by Q1 plus Q2 by 2. So let us put it in bracket. And then similarly you have P2 minus P1 divided by P1 plus P2 divided by 2. So if you cancel them out, it basically looks like this. Q2 divided by Q1 by Q1 plus Q2, and then this divided by P2 minus P1 divided by P1 plus P2. So this is the formula of arc elasticity, which we use when the gap is higher, when we have the price and quantity values for two different points. Otherwise, we use the simple, our differential formula of elasticity. Okay, so now we will look at the different demand curves that will be generated if we use our idea of, if we use these values. So let us start with the lowest value, that is E equal to 0. So we'll write like this: shapes of demand curve. So, and elasticity. So as I said, when we write simply elasticity, we generally mean price elasticity of demand. So when the elasticity is 0, what do you mean by that? That essentially means that there is no response at all. So if there is a price increase, the quantity demanded, if there is 1% increase in price, the decrease in percentage decrease in quantity remains the same compared to even when the price decreases. So if I have this 0, Q and P, a zero elasticity basically says that whatever be the price or the change in price, there is no percentage change in quantity. So this becomes my demand curve. You can see that for several different prices, it remains the same. All right. So that means what? That means demand curve is vertical. Okay, now can we say this mathematically, so to say? Can we say this mathematically? And one way of saying is that, you see, if dpu dq into p dq dp into p by q equal to 0. So essentially what we have is dq dp is equal to 0. And in our structure, the slope of this one is basically dp dq, which will be infinity. I mean, technically it will be undefined, but anyway, so it will approach to infinity or equal to infinity. So you have a straight line vertical demand curve. So you can see that obviously understanding how this shape comes in terms of economics, that is more important, and that is what is important actually. But you can derive it using the elasticity value only if specific values of elasticity are given, not otherwise. Okay, so now we can go to the symmetrically opposite case. So after I have done this, we can do this one also, E equal to infinity. So we can just blindly write using the idea of symmetry that if it is infinity, then we are dealing with a horizontal demand curve. So the demand curve is horizontal. That means the diagram will be pretty simple. The diagram will be this. So you have Q1, Q2, so on and so forth. Now, this demand curve is actually pretty interesting in the sense that we can understand from a horizontal demand curve that if price increases, suddenly the quantity demanded falls to 0. So this is something that we understand. How do we interpret when the price decreases? Because if price decreases, the quantity demanded must increase. Then how do I get this horizontal demand curve? The idea is this: if price decreases, the quantity demanded that is changing is huge. So huge that basically we denote it by infinity. Okay, that's the idea. See, the elasticity is measuring the change in percentage change in demand. Now, when P increases, the demand becomes 0. So that's why we say that the decrease in demand, that the change is infinite. Here, if price decreases, then you can think like this, that the whole of market demand will suddenly concentrate to one single commodity, the demand of which we are talking about. So that huge change in quantity demanded is defined by infinity. Okay, because several times I have seen that people say that when price decreases, the demand comes to 0. That is not the idea, that the demand comes to 0. Think for yourself, that doesn't make any sense, right? So this is how we make sense of it. Anyways, so now we can use our intuition and we can think that this is a vertical curve, this is a horizontal curve. That means the curve is becoming flatter, right? So that means what? That means more flatter, more elastic. Okay. So before we fill up other three, we can write this as a general rule. So what is the rule? The rule is this: flatter the demand curve, higher is the elasticity. So more elastic. Now remember, we are talking about point elasticity of demand. That means I can draw it like this. So, okay. So this is the case of being 0. And let's choose this point, call it A. So now if we have a demand curve like this, then this one will have a lower elasticity compared to this one. So D1 D2, D3, and in the extreme, we have D4. Okay, so you can write that. So we call it, okay. So we divide it like less than 1, that is inelastic. So that is, we call it steeper, right? Then leaving this space for equal to 1, this is greater than 1, and this is flatter. Okay. So we write this understanding this sort of a diagram. Now what happens if E equal to 1? Let's try. So equal to 1 means dq dp into p by q is equal to 1. So that is dq dp is q by p, which tells me that we are in d log q equal to d log p. Okay. And then we can integrate, solving this equation, we can write like this: log q equal to log p plus log c. Now there is a slight change. The change is that, as I said, when I will be calculating, it is better that I put, it is not better, it is the rule that when you will be solving a problem, you put the minus sign. Right? So -1, in terms of computation, -1 is the elasticity. So -1, so there is a minus sign. So here also we have a minus sign. While computation, always remember to do this. Earlier we solved the problem for 0. So that doesn't, so we didn't care about plus or minus, but here we need that. So what is this? This is basically log QP is equal to log C. And taking antilog, we can say that PQ is equal to C. So this is the exact form of the demand curve. Now, P and Q are variable. If I am drawing the diagram in the PQ plane or QP plane, so to say. So these two variables, they become a constant, that is C. That means what? That means we are looking at a rectangular hyperbola. So if I take A and measure this area, and then I take some B and measure this area, these two areas will be identical. So when it is equal to 1, remember these are all absolute values, the demand curve will be rectangular hyperbola. We can tell the shape exactly, and that's a huge advantage. Okay, so let me write it separately. So yeah, so you can write it here. So rectangular hyperbola. Rectangular hyperbola. Okay. All right. Okay. So now we will move on to something which is which will give actually a very meaningful interpretation of elasticity. And that is connecting elasticity with total revenue. See, elasticity, and for that we have to actually go to the source of this measurement. So what actual elasticity is? Nowadays we say that elasticity measures percentage change in quantity demanded with respect to 1% change in price. But originally, the concept of elasticity actually tried to measure this. So you can write that also. It measures the change in total expenditure it measures the change in total expenditure. This is very bad way of writing it. Anyway, so let me write it here. Measures the change in total expenditure with respect to a change in price. With respect to a change in price. Okay, that's what it wanted to measure. So what is the idea? Now the idea is that if we go deeper into it, so if P increases, obviously quantity will decrease. That is said by law of demand. So what is the new question that are asking? We are asking what happens to P into Q. Okay. So for example, so there can be, okay, let me write like this, that when price increases, there can be three cases. And what are they? So price increases and P into Q, that is your expenditure, it increases. Then price increases and P into Q, your expenditure remains same. And then price increases and your expenditure reduces. Okay. So there can be three cases. Now think of this. If price increases and quantity decreases, and if we see that this total expenditure is increasing, that means what? That means the percentage change in increase in Q is higher than the percentage decrease in P. The amount of decrease that you observe in P is much lower than the amount of increase that it caused in quantity demanded. And that is why PQ, no, sorry, if total expenditure increased, sorry, that means if price increased, then quantity demanded must have decreased, but it didn't decrease so much. So that's why, okay, think of this, P into Q, right? So P decreases and PQ increases. No, sorry. P increases and PQ increases, okay? Now the law says that Q must decrease. So Q actually decreased. But the point is that Q did not decrease so much, so to compensate the increase in price and the total expenditure increased. So how to express that? That is expressed by elasticity. So if this happens, we say that demand is inelastic. So the quantity demanded did not change that much as a response to the increase in price. That would have decreased the expenditure. That didn't happen. Okay. So you can guess the other one. So for this one, unitary elastic. And remember the diagram. If you look at the demand curve that we obtained, what was that? That was P into Q equal to C. So PQ is expenditure, C is a constant. That means your expenditure is not changing. And here, your total expenditure decreases. That means percentage change in Q, decrease in percentage change in quantity demanded in the lower direction is sufficient. So here we will say that the demand is inelastic. the demand is inelastic. Okay. So that's how the original idea of elasticity works. Now, you can easily think that you can have another chart almost similar to this, which will talk about this fact, which will start with that P decreases and quantity demanded increases, then what happens to P and Q? And when P decreases, there can be three different cases, right? And think of this, it will be entirely opposite. So for example, if P decreases, then quantity must increase. There is no problem with that. But if the total expenditure increases, that means increase in quantity in percentage terms surpassed or get over, it crossed basically the decrease in prices. So in this case, here I will say that the demand is elastic, right? Because the increase in Q, it overcompensates the decrease in P. So total expenditure increases. This one, it remains the same even when it decreases. And in the third case, it will just be the opposite. So when price decreased, quantity demanded increased, but it failed to increase so much that your total expenditure can rise basically. Okay. It, yeah. Okay. So, oh, I wrote inelastic earlier here also. Sorry. In the earlier case, okay, let me just clarify this again. So if price increased and PQ decreased, this means that if price increases, quantity demand will reduce and reduce so much that it went over this. So here the demand is elastic. Okay, this is the correct statement. And let me write it like this. So if price decreases and PQ decreases, that means basically, although the quantity demanded increased, but it didn't increase that much. So demand is inelastic. So now you can get the idea that the whole how we, or rather why we are saying that through elasticity we are interested in measuring the response. Okay, now this part is it looks simple, but the whole scenario changes by writing just one line, and that line is this: consumers total expenditure is farms consumers total expenditure is farms total revenue. Consumers total expenditure is farms total revenue. Okay. All right. And if you interpret like this changes the scenario, because then if the demand is inelastic, then the farm can actually increase the price, because it will know that although the increase in price will reduce the quantity demanded, but it will not reduce the quantity demanded so much that the total expenditure will reduce. And that means that farm's total revenue is actually going higher, right? So for inelastic demand, as we observe that for inelastic demand, if price increased, then quantity obviously will decrease, but quantity decreases, but not so much. And how do you define that? Not so much, and PQ actually increases. Okay. Now this PQ is farm's revenue. So that means what? A farm facing an inelastic demand can increase their price and get higher revenue even when the quantity demanded is decreasing. That is, even when the sale of the farms is decreasing. Okay. So that is a very important point that we are interested in. Okay. Now there is a very trivial kind of a job that we have, and that trivial job is that to measure the elasticity along a straight line demand curve. The objective of that task is pretty simple, that for a straight line, the slope is constant. So you can take a deeper look at what happens along a straight line and get a better understanding of inelastic demand and elastic demand. So at this level, it is a very simple task. So linear demand curve, and elasticity. So for a straight line, slope is constant, but elasticity changes from point to point. This happens because the value of price and quantity changes at each point, and so changes P by Q, right? Yeah. So if we draw a straight line, and if this is my demand curve, so Q, 0, P and all, okay? So if that is the case, then E own is basically dq dp into P by Q. Now I told you that we are interested in absolute values when you are determining elastic or inelastic. So to that extent, we can take this as some constant K because it's a straight line, and this formula becomes this into P by Q. So essentially, this E varies with this P by Q. Right? Or shall I write like this? So E varies with P by Q. So at this point and at this point, Q is 0. So that means at this specific point, we are looking at infinity value of E. Similarly, at this point, P is 0. So we are looking at E equal to 1. Now in between, obviously, it changes from elastic to, sorry, E is 0, sorry. So elastic to inelastic. Now, obviously, there will be a point where E is equal to 1. So how to get that? So put E equal to 1. Then this means 1 by K is equal to P by Q, or Q by P is equal to K. So the point where Q by P is equal to K, that is K is basically the slope. So where Q by P equals the slope, we have E equal to 1. So let's say this is the point, because unless we have a very specific formula, we cannot really compute that. So let's say this is E equal to 1. So obviously this part is what we call as elastic, and this part is what we call as inelastic. Okay. So this is how elasticity varies along a demand curve. Okay. All right. So now we will move on to the other two types of elasticities that are pretty relevant to us. Rather, other two types of demand elasticities. So the second one is what we're interested in is cross price elasticities of demand. And you can imagine the formula of this. It's pretty easy, right? So what will be that? So if I write E cross then D, or sometimes written as E 1 comma 2, or in general you can write EIJ. This is all this symbol you will observe in book of mathematical economics. Okay, so there we do it like this. II means own price and quantity. IJ means own price, own quantity and different price. This goes for quantity. Okay, and this goes for price. And then we have something called EIM, where quantity, and this is income. So you observe this. Yes, you will come across these symbols in a Mathiko book. Anyway, so we can write EIJ, and what is EIJ? It is basically DQI DPJ into, sorry, PJ divided by QY, right? Okay, so two related goods, quantity of one, price of second. That's how it works. It's pretty simple even. You can just take a look at it and you can simply understand. Okay. And then we are going to look at an old rule, and the rule is this. Cross price elasticity, cross price elasticity, cross price elasticity is positive for substitutes and cross price elasticity is positive for substitutes and negative for complements. Okay, negative for complements. So that is natural, because for complements, you know that it behaves like own price actually. Anyways, so this is what is true. This is a general rule that for the cross price elasticity. Okay, so now we'll go to the other one, which is the income elasticity of demand. And defining that is also very easy. So number 3, income elasticities of demand, and that we'll write it as EIM is equal to DQI D. Okay, let's use capital letter DM into M by QI. So we have different names for goods depending on their income elasticity of demand. So for example, so number 1, for normal goods, higher income raises quantity demanded. Right? Okay. So for normal goods, or basically we can say that the other way around. So if an increase in income increases the quantity demanded, then the good is called normal good. That means we can say that normal goods have positive income elasticities. Normal goods have positive income elasticities. Okay. So number 2, or we can say that, yeah. So if an increase in income lowers quantity demanded, then it is an inferior good. And that means what? That means inferior goods have negative income elasticities. Inferior goods have negative income elasticities. Okay. And lastly, number 3, among normal goods, necessities have smaller income elasticities. Necessities have smaller income elasticities, and luxuries have higher income elasticities. And the reason is so simple as people can live, right? Can. So people can live without luxuries. So the reason is as simple as that. Okay, so this brings a close on our discussion on price elasticity of demand.